What's going on with BMW? In this video, that's exactly what I'm going to explore. I'm going to show you the golden era of BMW design and then compare it to today's cars and show you why BMW is heading in the completely wrong direction with its design. I'm not just going to say that they're ugly and totally lack the spirit of what a BMW is. I'm going to show you why that's the case by going back in time. Growing up, BMWs were some of the coolest, most confidence-inspiring, beautiful cars on the roads. They were instantly recognizable thanks to the very strong and congruent design language across the entire board, from the gorgeous E38 7 Series to the E46 3 Series, not to mention my favorite M3 of all time, the E46 M3 CSL, and I can't leave out the magical E39 BMW M5. What a fantastic time it was for BMW, both in performance and overall confidence, and of course design as well. BMW used to have a face that communicated strength and purpose. A face that said, I will get you there, no matter the distance, or even if we have to go through thunderstorms or blizzards, I will get you there. That's the feeling I got when I was faced with BMWs growing up. If you saw an E39 M5, for example, in the rearview mirror, you did the right thing and you moved over. The design was filled with passion and strong, unbroken lines connecting the front and the rear. Beautiful, powerful volumes that looked both muscular and athletic at the same time. And to this day, I don't think there is any full-size luxury sedan that looks nimbler and more agile than the sleek 7 Series. It's definitely one of the best looking sedans of all time. This passion for automotive design spread all across the lineup of the time, even to the more exclusive models such as the gorgeous BMW Z8, which was of course inspired by the classic BMW 507 of the late 1950s. The rear end of the Z8 has to be one of the best looking rear ends of any BMW, and it would definitely work as a concept or even as a production car today. Then you have the introduction of what was called flame surfacing with the first generation BMW Z4, and this design was penned by Anders Warming and has a beautiful flow to it. It was experimental and bold for sure, but it's still clearly a BMW. Warming also designed one of my all-time BMW concepts. That's the 2006 Mille Miglia, was also heavily inspired by the flame surfacing treatment, and of course the 1938 BMW 328. I mean, just look at how beautiful flow in the body lines and how it's built up by long stretched out curvatures that kind of intersects into each other. And you can definitely tell that it was sketched by hand just by analyzing these lines here in the design of the car. Now I want to jump into Photoshop and show you some of the current lineup of BMW and what went wrong with their design. So here we have some of the current cars of BMW, and I just want to show you, I'm going to show you this sample of cars from the current generation, and then I'm going to show you a sample of cars from about 15, 20 years ago and show you exactly what I think went wrong or is going wrong currently with BMW. The thing is, we don't have a congruent design language or identity, DNA across the board of BMW anymore. Just have a look at, for example, we have, which been talked about so much, I've made several videos on the BMW M3 and the M4 here. Wrinkles in the front, and then all of a sudden it becomes the smoothest paper you've ever seen in your life. With these kidneys right here, as you can see, massive kidneys that don't connect with anything else graphically in the front of the car. And if you want to go and check the detailed videos that I made about this and the redesigns, you can go and do so on this channel and on the Sketch Monkey channel. I understand that this is a throwback to the 1930s BMWs, but at the same time you can't just stick a massive graphic features like this in the front end that doesn't have the same kind of flow to it as everything else in the front of the car. As you can see, there are too many curvatures here going on, and it doesn't feel like it's connected with the rest of the car. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem that BMW has right now is their identity. They don't know who they are. So here we have the new M240i 2022 model. You can see that the grille here is completely different from what we have on the M3 and M4. You have a completely different treatment of the chamfers here, for example, that goes around the headlights, and the design of the headlights itself is different from what you have in the 3 and 4. And then if we go down to the 3 series, or the X3 I mean, down here, you can see that we have these interesting triangular shapes that kind of clashes with everything else going on in the front end of the car. I've made a redesign on both of these, the M240i and the X3 as well. The biggest problem with the X3 is if you look in the rear taillights, the update they did to the taillights, it just looks like it's a very static looking thing that has zero passion in it, and that's the overall problem that BMW has at the moment. And then you have a different, again, a different facial treatment from both these cars, the M3, M4, and different from the 2 series, and of course different from the X3 down here as well. So you have a, what is this, a fourth way to design the front end of the BMW, but it doesn't stop there. Just have a look at the BMW iX. I'm not sure what happened with this design at all, because this is honestly one of the worst automotive designs. I think it's the worst automotive design I've seen from BMW. Might work as a product design. If you have in consumer electronics, it could work like something like that. But for a BMW, the iX, I'm not sure what happened here. The proportions and the graphics are so off that it feels like you had 20 different designers working on the same project, and everybody was fighting and arguing with each other, and out came this, where you have one designing doing the kidneys in the front, you have one designing doing this line right here, you have another designer maybe doing this, another designer going in and wanting to have some chamfers here and some squareness that are not really square. They're still round but square-ish, and it's such a mess, the iX design, that I have no idea what BMW is doing. And you can see that this sideline here, you don't have any strength in the car. The iX, to me, let's just remove all of these. I made a video on this as well on the Sketch Monkey. I think the redesign is there on that channel if you want to go and see that. The main problem that I have with the iX, if you compare this design to, for example, the BMW Z4 or any design from the late 90s and the 2000s, you can tell that this is not sketched with any sort of passion. It's like it's been modeled in 3D from the ground up. It didn't start as a sketch, because you don't have any of these lines that you need when you're sketching a car. Long lines like this, sweeping lines to create this type of design and feeling and passion that you can see that it's actually been sketched by a person and not by a computer. You don't have any of those lines in the BMW iX. It's definitely a computer design, and I don't like that, specifically not when it comes to BMW. BMW should always have a hand touch to it, and that's the thing. They do have that in one of the current models. It gets even more confusing than having 5 different types of faces on each different model in BMW's lineup. They still have a traditional old proper looking front fascia of a BMW, and that is if we look at the BMW M5 and the 5 series here, specifically the M5, because we have these intakes here that are a modernization of what we have on the previous M5, with no weird triangles going on like this in the front end that doesn't connect with any of these lines right here. This is a good design. This is what BMW could work on here. Keep the original identity of what BMW is. Explore with new things, have some fun, and I really love the treatment. If you look closely here on the M5 and this the shoulder line, it's a very interesting approach to a new way of creating a sharp, strong shoulder, because if you look at the chamfer that goes from the windows right here down in the greenhouse, you can see that it stretches here, it creates a strong line like this, and then almost zigzags. One goes down here, the other one goes in here, fades from kind of soft here into a very sharp, strong line right there. I think this shoulder line is very beautifully done. It's a cool approach to how you can still create a strong shoulder without losing the strength, especially right here in the rear end, to have it be a hand touch, a hand-drawn line which stretches far across the body of the car. And then I just wanted to put in the i4 here, the treatment of the kidneys here, which I think doesn't work as well as it does on the M3, for example. If you're gonna have these kidneys, I think it works the best on the M3. It looks decent here. However, they still clash with the softness and the roundness, the elliptical feeling of the headlights, and they also clash with this angle right here. There's too much going on, but if you are going to buy one of these cars, the M4 or the M3. You also have this, of course, shoulder line here that you don't have in the soft, squishy looking melted M4. One's kind of shoulder down here, sitting like this, when it should be strong and proud and confident in the shoulder line like we have on the M3 up here. And that's why I'm so confused with BMW's lineup at the moment. It's all over the place. And I get it. They try to figure out a new identity. A lot of companies have this issue though right now where we're going into the electric era or the EV era of automotive design, and they're not sure how are we going to treat this package that's been around for a century, where you have engine in the front, you have a transmission that needs to be fitted somewhere, and now we just don't have those anymore. So how are we going to redesign our identity based on these new proportions and the new package that is an EV, where you have a battery as a platform, you can build whatever you want on top? I think it's a good idea to experiment with stuff like this, but that doesn't mean that you should completely forget about what really made the brand for the last 50 years. So let's have a look at the good old days, the golden days of BMW. And that is, to me, this is the golden days of BMW. I mean, I love both the E46 M3 and the 2001 here E39 M5. I think these are the best M3 and the M5s. I want you to compare the identity of the front here. Look at this front, look at this front, and the 4.6 beast of first generation X5 down there. You can see that they are in the same brand. It's definitely a BMW. This tradition goes back to the BMW 2002, which you can see right here. 3-liter CSL right here as well. They look different from the 2000 models, the E46 and E39, of course, but they still had a congruent design and a familiar design across the board back in the 50s and the 60s as well. And I popped in the Z8 here because I wanted to show you that you can still wander outside the boundaries of your current lineup, which was at the time, for example, the E46 here, and create something completely different. And this is, of course, the BMW Z8 based on the BMW 507 from the late 1950s. Beautiful modern interpretation of 50s design, and it's definitely sketched by hand here. This is not a computer design like we have here with this consumer electronics iX. So to wrap it up here, I think manufacturers are in general a little bit lost trying to design EVs, because we've been stuck with the same package for so long, for a century now, that those proportions don't apply anymore, and brands are trying to figure out a new identity for the electrical package. Now, BMW, as I've shown here, for the longest time, they know how to make great automotive design. But their problem today is that they're moving into more of a product design feel, and there is a huge difference between a product design and an automotive design. Automotive design, it's a sculpture, it's a feeling. You need to be struck by an emotion when you see a automotive design, because it has to have this human touch to it that doesn't really apply to all consumer electronics and product designs. But car design always need to have the human touch to it, and I think that's what BMW is losing at the moment while they're trying to figure out the new designs. I'm all for experimenting with new designs and solutions, that's not the problem. However, while you transform into your new self, don't make the mistake and get rid of the features that made you great.